night, another attempt to crush speech. Writer Gavin McInnes was delivering a speech, or attempting to, at NYU tonight when a mass of protesters showed up. A fistfight broke out. Attendees were called Nazi scum. Hats were burned. In the video of the event, you can hear glass shattering. Reportedly, at least 4 people have been arrested. We'll say more on this, and we may speak to Gavin McInnes tomorrow. We're going to try to. Hannity is up next. Don't miss that. Have a great night.
Tonight, the left completely unhinged. And now they've turned violent. Michelle Malkin reacts.
The president made it clear in this executive order that we are not going to compromise the safety and security of the American people.
The Trump administration has put the world on notice. We went to the White House today to speak with Vice President Mike Pence. And President Trump is not your typical politician.
I am a man of my word. I will do as I say.
And lawmakers are feeling the heat. Laura Ingraham is here to weigh in. All of that, plus Lou Dobbs is here. Hannity starts right here, right now. And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, Vice President Pence, Michelle Malkin, Laura Ingraham will join us. But first, we are just 14 days into the Trump administration, and the left is completely unhinged, and now they're turning violent. And that is tonight's opening monologue. Last night, out-of-control protesters, they were rocking the campus of UC Berkeley out in California, capping off a chaotic 2-week stretch of disruptive demonstrations. Now, UC Berkeley was forced to cancel a speech by Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos after anti-free speech rioters, well, they started smashing windows, launching Molotov cocktails at police, and even setting part of the campus on fire, as you see there. Now, earlier this morning, President Trump responded to the violence. He tweeted out, quote, "If UC Berkeley does not allow free speech and practices violence on innocent people with a different point of view, well, no federal funds, question mark?" Now, the shocking public disorder at UC Berkeley comes after a week of protests all across the nation, some of which featured agitators calling for violence against President Trump and the White House, including this person wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt at a protest that allegedly took place in Seattle. Watch this.
White people, give your money, your house, your property, reparations. Reparate Black and Indigenous people right now. We're all operating under white supremacy, just so you know. And we need to start killing people. First off, we need to start killing the White House. The White House must die. The White House, President, they must go.
White House die? Why has that person not been arrested? Now, sadly, these protesters were just following the lead of many prominent public figures on the left who have been having a complete meltdown since Donald Trump's victory in November. Now, this includes celebrity snowflakes like Madonna, Ashley Judd, who delivered these very disturbing remarks at a protest. This was one day after the president was sworn into office. We've got to warn you, this language is very graphic, very vulgar. Look for yourself.
Two are detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything. You. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. I am a nasty woman. I'm not as nasty as a man who looks like he bathes in Cheeto dust. I am not as nasty as your own daughter being your favorite sex symbol.
Now, this type of language from the left is not going away. In fact, I predict this is only going to get worse. Now, Democrats in the U.S. Senate, as we speak, they are preparing a stiff resistance to the confirmation of Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. And if history repeats itself, well, this obstruction could be just as nasty and divisive, if not worse. For example, you might remember when President Reagan, his Supreme Court nominee, Judge Robert Bork, back in 1987, he was not confirmed by the U.S. Senate. After Democrats, they painted Bork as a sexist and racist, which he was not, and Senator Ted Kennedy said this about Bork on the U.S. Senate floor. Watch this disgrace.
Robert Bork's America is a land in which women would be forced into back alley abortions, blacks would sit at segregated lunch counters, rogue police could break down citizens' doors in midnight raids, and school children could not be taught about evolution. Writers and artists would be censored at the whim of government.
Now, after those lies and scare tactics were used by the left, Democrats, they were able to block Bork's nomination, and that's how we ended up with the term being borked. And that's not all. In 1991, George Herbert Walker Bush, he nominated Clarence Thomas to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Democrats, they used similar dirty tactics. In fact, they had his former colleague, Anita Hill, testify and make unfounded sexual harassment claims against him. Now, Justice Thomas referred to this as a, quote, high-tech lynching. Watch this powerful moment from Clarence Thomas.
And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Sad but extremely powerful. So as Democrats now gear up to smear Judge Gorsuch and as protests continue to disrupt the law and order all across the country, here's the question. Will the leaders of the Democratic Party call for an end to this violence, an end to the lies and the smearing and besmirchment and obstruction? Now, sadly, we probably won't get a call of unity from former President Obama. He had this to say about the widespread protests after this election. Listen to this.
I would not advise people who feel strongly or are concerned about some of the issues that have been raised during the course of the campaign. I wouldn't advise them to be silent.
Well, don't be silent, and he encouraged the protesters. Now, meanwhile, the Stronger Together candidate, Hillary Clinton, has praised some of the recent protests on Twitter. And let me be clear here. This is important. President Obama, Hillary Clinton, Senate House Democratic leaders, if you continue to coddle this outrage, this behavior from your side of the aisle, then the repercussions of the violence and the anarchy, it will be on your hands. You're responsible. You're supposed to be leaders. Joining us now, the host of Michelle Malkin Investigates on CRTV.com, Michelle Malkin. I don't